The night did not feel empty, even though the streets were silent, because silence itself had learned his name and followed him like a shadow that refused to detach, wrapping around his thoughts as he walked forward with the weight of years pressing down on his spine, years of being unseen, unheard, underestimated, and quietly dismissed by a world that never bothered to ask how much strength it takes to keep breathing when every dream you ever trusted has collapsed in slow motion, and with every step he remembered the faces, the moments, the promises made and broken, the doors closed gently but firmly in his face, the laughter that followed after he turned away, the whispers that said he wasn't enough, never would be, and yet somehow here he was, still standing, still moving, still refusing to disappear, because something inside him, something raw and unkillable, refused to let the story end in silence, and as his memories bled into the present he realized that pain had not come to destroy him but to shape him, to sharpen him, to strip away the illusions and reveal the core of who he truly was beneath fear and doubt, and he understood that every failure had been a lesson written in fire, every loss a teacher that demanded attention, every lonely night a training ground for resilience, and as the wind cut across his face he felt something unfamiliar rise in his chest, not hope, not yet, but defiance, a quiet rebellion against the version of himself that once waited for permission, because the truth had finally settled in with brutal clarity. No one was coming to save him, no moment would magically arrive to grant him worth, no voice would announce that he was ready, and in that realization there was terror, yes, but also freedom, because if no one was coming then he was free to become everything he feared he could be, free to rebuild himself from the ashes without apology. And as the city lights flickered like distant stars he made a silent promise to himself that this pain would not be wasted, that every scar would become proof of survival, that every setback would fuel the fire rather than extinguish it, and the more he leaned into that promise the more the weight on his chest began to shift, transforming into pressure, pressure into power, power into purpose, and he understood that purpose is not found, it is forged, hammered into existence by those who refuse to quit even when quitting would be easier, and in that moment he stopped walking and stood still, feeling the ground beneath his feet as if for the first time, realizing that this was the line between who he had been and who he was becoming, and crossing it would require sacrifice, discipline, and relentless belief in a future he could not yet see, but he was ready, because something had awakened inside him, something dangerous, something unstoppable, and as he lifted his head and breathed deeply he knew this was only the beginning, the first chapter of a transformation that would demand everything from him and give nothing back unless he earned it. And if anyone was watching this journey unfold, if anyone had ever felt this same heaviness, this same quiet hunger for more, then this story was for them too, a reminder that strength is built in darkness, that greatness begins when you decide not to look away from your own potential, and that the journey you are witnessing does not continue unless you choose to walk it with him, step by step, chapter by chapter, because some stories are not meant to be watched from a distance. They are meant to be followed, committed to, and lived alongside until the evening arrived without ceremony, the kind that doesn't announce itself with hope or promise but simply exists, demanding participation whether one feels ready or not, and he welcomed it with a calm intensity that surprised even him, because something fundamental had shifted overnight, not loud or dramatic, but deep and irreversible, like bedrock settling after an earthquake, and as he rose and faced the day he no longer asked what he felt like doing but what needed to be done, understanding now that motivation is unreliable but discipline is loyal, and this understanding guided his movements as he began to rebuild his life piece by piece, habit by habit, thought by thought, learning to sit with discomfort instead of running from it, learning that progress often feels like nothing at all while it is quietly changing everything beneath the surface, and as days turned into weeks he started to notice how the world responded differently, not because it had changed, but because he had, his posture firmer, his eyes steadier, his voice no longer seeking approval, and people sensed it, that unspoken signal of someone who had stopped negotiating with their limits, and yet the journey was not clean or easy, because growth never is, and there were mornings when doubt returned like an old enemy knocking softly, reminding him of past failures, trying to lure him back into comfort and excuses, but now he recognized the pattern, understood that doubt was not a warning but a test, and each time he chose to move forward anyway he grew stronger, not louder, not arrogant, but grounded, rooted in the knowledge that consistency beats talent when talent refuses to commit, and through this process he began to understand something even more powerful. That pain does not disappear when you grow, it simply loses its authority over you, and the things that once broke him now became reminders of how far he had come, markers on a long road that only the persistent survive, and as his vision sharpened he started to see beyond himself, realizing that this journey was never meant to be private, that stories like his carry weight because they echo in the lives of others who are still standing at the beginning, still doubting whether change is possible, and he imagined them watching from the shadows, searching for proof that transformation is real, that discipline can rewrite destiny, that an ordinary person can become extraordinary through relentless effort, and it fueled him even more, knowing that by continuing forward he was unknowingly giving others permission to do the same, and so he leaned into the grind, the repetition, the lonely hours no one applauds, because he understood that true power is built when no one is watching. And as the world slowly began to open doors, he no longer rushed through them, choosing instead to walk with intention, prepared for both success and failure, because he had learned that neither defines you unless you let it, and by the time he reached the place he once only dreamed of, it didn't feel like an ending but a responsibility, a call to keep going, to keep evolving, to never settle into comfort again. And if someone out there was still watching, still listening, still wondering whether they should continue following this path, the answer was already written in every step he took forward, because this story does not belong to him alone, it belongs to anyone brave enough to commit to the process, to stay for the long road, to choose growth over comfort again and again. And those who stay until the end are not just viewers of the journey, they become part of it, walking beside it, growing with it, and proving through their presence that some transformations are worth following all the way through.